Okay, so I think we're ready to welcome our panelists. So yeah, please guys come and take a seat. So welcoming Ash from XION, Mash from RISC Zero, Ruks from Aleo. Take a seat, take your mic. No, it doesn't matter. If you want. Yeah, that's fine. And tonight we're going to talk about working in ZK. So actually, in this room, how many people are already working in the ZK industry? Raise your hand. Okay, so now our job is going to convince all the rest, all people who didn't show their hands, that working in ZK is nice. So, you know what? Before we start the discussion, let's plant the decor. And so why you guys don't say a few words about yourself? So your name, who you are, and what you currently do. We'll get into the details after, so just make it quick, but just for people to get to know you briefly. So maybe we can start with you.
Hi, I'm Ash, my pseudonym. We're working on a project called the Burnt Xion L1. Gonna onboard the next billion users, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mosh. I work at RISC Zero. I work on the partnerships and ecosystem team. And we do general purpose ZK infrastructure.
Hi, I'm Ruks. I work at Aleo, and I am an events lead.
Okay, great. So actually, before we dive into the actual ZK, let's look into what you did before. So assuming this is not your first experience, even though you look super young, maybe Ruks, we can start with you. So what have you been doing before Aleo and before working in ZK?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting journey. I started off in psychology. I was going to become a psychologist and decided to drop out of my master's program. I started working at a media company, and then from there I started working in startups, really interested in entrepreneurship, really hustled, started a startup of my own, had one exit, had one failed business, decided to live on a beach. And then I had some friends reach out to me in the crypto space saying they needed some help in marketing, some help in events. And I said, well, can I do it sitting on a beach? And they said, yeah, that's probably fine. And 2.5 years later, I now work at Aleo.
Okay, very nice. How about you, Mash? Is beach involved or not?
Oh my God, beach has not been involved for a while, but it is very soon in my future, for sure. That's endgame. Wow, that's honestly such a fascinating journey, and would love to ask you more about your exit as well. I like to say that, like, crypto has honestly been my only career, for better or for worse. I had the privilege to kind of get introduced into blockchain like when I was in college. I joined my school's blockchain organization, which was blockchain at Berkeley. And from the time I was a sophomore, I had a chance to really get exposed to a lot of the emerging kind of technologies. At that time, Ethereum just launched on their mainnet. We had a lot of different ICOs going on, which was really fascinating to see how people were thinking about value capture in the data market. And I primarily worked on use cases around trusted execution environments, prediction markets like the Augur, if people remember Augur.
The OG before Polymarket,
the OG prediction market, the OG Poly market. And then a few other, use cases around this space. I did get involved in a few ICO, launches. We just call those TGEs now. We've rebranded.
Yeah.
It was just a positioning issue. But yeah, I kind of have been, growing with this space. But my, biggest kind of motivation into getting into crypto is I'm from Bangladesh, and so my country is rife with a lot of corruption and a lack of transparency when it comes to how governments are using funds. And there's also a big issue of data sovereignty and how the government is tracking people through social media, basically boycotting a lot of voices and a lot of different folks from different populations and demographics. And seeing crypto and the kind of libertarian values and also the way that that people have been building open financial infrastructure has been really critical to me, and that's kind of what got me in. So I worked before ZK, I worked at Cello. That was kind of one of my biggest L1 projects that I worked on. I was there for 2.5 years doing DeFi and NFTs, and then found my way into the ZK VM space.
Okay, nice. So how about you, Ash?
For 10 years before I got into the crypto space, I was like software mercenary in San Francisco. So jumping into startups in different different verticals, different industries, no team bigger than like 15 people, trying to get as many products out the door as quickly and as effectively as possible. And I might be one of these foolish people who believes in these privacy, security, sovereignty aspects of crypto, which, you know, it seems like mostly now it's just how can we make these numbers go up quickly? But I like to believe there's still some people that do this.
Yeah, of course. Actually, it's interesting because I want to jump into why ZK, and so just to clarify, you're actually not technically working in ZK at the moment, right?
I'm working with teams that are working on ZK.
Okay, I see. So would you say that for you the main angle you were interested in the technology is this privacy question that you just mentioned, or actually more like the scalability use?
Neither. So we've taken a very marketing user acquisition approach to an L1, and that part's not really interesting for this topic. But what we realized is if we expand the audience of crypto users to non-technical people who don't want to be their own bank, there's nothing to do here for them. They've run out of, like we can get them in the door, and then there's nothing. So the part that always interested me about ZK is it has the potential to answer the question, like, why do you need to operate in crypto at all if you could just be a Web2 company? It feels like the first thing that is an actual game changer that can't necessarily just be done in Web2. It opens this whole class of products that finally give reasoning to this industry for non-technical users. And it feels like we've been given like a treasure map, and like, hey, there's this magic thing which will change the world. It's going to explode into its own industry. We just happen to be here early. Like,
yeah, that's an interesting take. And actually related to what you said just before, Mash, for you jumping into ZK, was it kind of a next level compared to when you started? You were in crypto for this reason you mentioned, also being from Bangladesh.
When I was at Cello, what Cello was really great at, and one of the reasons why I joined Cello was actually, as much as it was about emerging markets, at that time, Cello was one of the first teams to build out a ZK-like client. And not a lot of people know about this. It's the ultra sync-like client called Pluto. And essentially it was used to, sync the transactions in low bandwidth areas for that black connectivity, to make sure that essentially you can still verify those transactions even if you lost connection to a particular network. And so when I was at Cello, I was doing a lot of product experiments. My role was essentially more on the ecosystem side, so it was definitely a lot of partnerships, a lot of grants, but it was also incubating a lot of use cases. And so one of the use cases that I worked on was kind of Impact Passport, which utilized storage proofs, and specifically cross-chain storage proofs. And that was really my first foray into ZK, and it really blew my mind as to how we can actually create consumer experiences that were portable. I've been deeply more interested on the consumer side, whether that is in Web 2 or Web 3. And when I was able to kind of see that, wow, you can create trustless kind of infrastructure, trustless dApps that have the security guarantees of ZK, but also have the portability of Web 2 experiences, that really blew my mind. And that's kind of why I'm here. We're kind of at an inflection point at RISC Zero where we're seeing this new era of provable apps and dApps coming up, especially in our proving network. And so it's very exciting to, stay the course for the past year and see that vision come to life. Yeah. Okay,
nice, great. And yeah, Ruks, maybe to continue with you, maybe we want to mention privacy. Maybe we want to mention privacy as a use case for ZK. So yeah, was it kind of one of the reasons on your side that you digged into the ZK space? Or yeah, it's more like maybe the technical reasons, scalability side, like the two others?
So for me, I think similar to tapping into your experience, my background is Indian and East African, and growing up, I always felt incredibly just coin toss lucky to be born in Canada. So there was always this kind of aspect to me that was how do I contribute to something that could help a version of me, a more maybe higher percentage, on the global scale of things. And so I think the Web3 space really spoke to me, but kind of like you're saying, it was difficult for me to imagine a reality where that made sense for everyone today. You know, you have all these hypotheticals of people talking about how it could improve the lives of farmers in, you know, certain parts of the world, but these people don't have technical capacity, they don't have, you know, consistent Wi-Fi, they don't have all the things that we kind of take for granted that we're kind of assuming for them to have access to. And so I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door, like paying attention, but not really sure how to like make an impact. And so when I started like working with Web3 companies, it was in like liquidity pooling, and it was in DeFi, and it was helping them with their marketing projects, and it was really just like to make some money and see what I could find. And so when Aleo kind of was introduced to me, I thought, okay, I think there's something substantial here. I think this makes sense for safety, for security, for medical records, for gaming, for fun. Like the application that this could really go into made actual sense in my real life. And I thought, okay, if I can see this working, then maybe this has some legs. And if not Aleo, obviously personally would love to see that. I think zero knowledge does need to be the step that will move the industry forward. And that alone was enough for me to like, you know, jump in.
If I may like add, I think that's literally like also why I'm here too. And maybe this might be a greater motivation for us to why we're all here. We live in kind of an interesting time, specifically, you know, if we know like in the US where Roe v. Wade has, you know, obviously the vote is going to all of the states, and a lot of states in the South have banned it and are criminalizing and prosecuting women who may be seeking abortions like outside. And this is a big issue because a lot of this data, and specifically feminine fertility data, is tracked by a lot of our healthcare apps and our cycle trackers. So from the consumer level, like, you know, how are projects, from a data sovereignty aspect, right, you know, how are these apps sharing this data? How are these apps keeping this data private? How are users going to be empowered to own their own data, but still not have, you know, not face a trade-off in the consumer experience that they're familiar with? And ZK is really, you know, from both the privacy angle and the scalability angle, which I believe has to work together to bring that vision forward and to bring a new era of applications that are safe to use as well.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of the people we're working with, you're working with, also driven by these, you know, these values, the ethos. Is it also the case for all the companies you're working? You mentioned you're working with companies using ZK. Do you see like these common, you know, shared values almost?
Sort of. It seems that ZK does kind of attract some of these more cypherpunk idealists. But we are seeing now with the tools becoming more approachable and easier to use, you're getting general product people. And it used to be that, you know, for a lot of the Web3 ecosystem, you have to assume that users care about self-sovereignty and things like that. Most of them don't. But now you can kind of give them those things as product features. They don't have to make any concessions. It just becomes part of the core infrastructure. Eventually, we're going to be confused as to why we ever didn't do this.
Yeah, okay, that's almost you're getting it for free, you know, in a way.
I mean, customers won't use privacy and independence tooling if it costs them any effort or money. So we need to just put it in there for them.
Almost a responsibility of the industry, basically, is what you say.
And I would even say, and that's a great point, I think it's all about baking in the privacy aspect like into that consumer experiences. But then one thing that we've noticed at RISC is, of course, like, what about the developer side? What about the builder side? In the past, you needed to know cryptography to even like, and be able to write your own DSLs for these, you know, custom experiences. And so we're just like, well, there's that abstraction at the consumer layer, and then there's also this abstraction that you have to do on the developer layer to get developers to be able to use the tooling and create these experiences and applications very easily. Yeah.
Wanted to add something?
I was just gonna say, like, I just think like we really need to shift from default privacy to default, you know, just because you don't have the information, you have all your information just like shared with whomever. And I think that what I do appreciate about our industry is that people are thinking about that extreme on the other side than like, oh, it's on you and we're gonna exploit you.
Yeah, these are great points. You're starting actually touching on it, but you mentioned that ZK used to be complicated and you need to know a lot of cryptography. So maybe before debating that, actually, how is it for you? Like, for you, Ruks, let's start with you. Like, how much did you need to learn to get into ZK? I mean, did you need to learn anything? I mean, yeah, what was your experience with this technical field?
Yeah, I'd say like, so I'm not a technical person, but I've always been a computational thinker. I think I'm always interested in understanding the mechanisms of how anything works. And like perhaps it's like difficult for me to change my mind about any one topic if I don't understand and agree on like the method of how it works. So this doesn't have to be technical in ways only, but like for me to understand like anything, for me to change my behavior, I have to understand how it operates and more or less accept it, right? And so getting into the ZK space, my first hesitation was like, well, I'm not an engineer. I also am not super familiar with zero knowledge technology. And I think for me, really understanding like the way it operated, that it's off chain, the proof is on the chain, that this allows for these type of applications and things like that was enough for me for my role at least, to understand and talk to the right folks. And then if they were interested in a kind of like the high level of it, I was able to like send them to our documentation or invite them to a technical workshop or any event where we have grantees or technical folks there. So I think in fact, oftentimes when you become incredibly skilled at something, you actually can explain it incredibly simply. And so in some ways you're kind of faking it till you make it. And when you get asked those questions, then you have to like understand what it is that you don't know and then fill those gaps. People are incredibly open, at least at this point, I think, in the space, because we all are kind of doing something that's never been done. And so there's a lot of okay, I'll get back to you, or let me connect you with so-and-so, they have an answer, or actually, I've never thought about that, like, let's explore that together.
Interesting. And so what about you, like in a BD role? Is it because you have interaction, of course, with the other companies? So yeah, how much ZK do you need to know? And was it hard to learn?
Turns out quite a bit, actually. I think like since we're doing more general purpose tech or general purpose infra, I have the privilege to really meet a lot of teams from a lot of different use cases, whether it's DeFi, light clients, bridging, protocols, rollups, folks in the Bitcoin space, and all of that. I would say definitely for me what helped was that early exposure in college, with my peers at the blockchain club. That kind of helped me kind of understand the fundamentals of just blockchain. How does a blockchain work, right? And then you kind of build it up from there. Now we have rollups, then we have L3s and DAs and all of the different modular pieces. And in terms of ZK, it was very hard to wrap my head around it. I mean, I had some exposure to storage proofs, and to me, I always try to distill things down from the buzzwords to what does it actually mean, right? So for me, interoperability means portable data experiences. Being able to seamlessly port your data from app to app, dApp to dApp, and all of that, right? And then it comes down to, okay, well, what do people actually care about if I'm in a BD role? I can sell you a lot of different buzzwords, right? And you and I will both leave that meeting scratching our head and thinking about what do we really talk about, and then try to have another follow-up. Or I can just say to you, here's how it's going to affect your bottom line. And that's really the type of conversations that I try to have internally, at least with my team. I rely a lot on my product team. They are absolutely integral to educating me, and I also rely on them during partnership calls as well, because they have a good understanding of the why behind the how. And I think unpacking that problem statement is always very important, not only to the client, but also towards myself for understanding all the different product offerings that we have. But yeah, I always try to get to the bottom line. It's like, okay, well, how is my solution going to impact your bottom line? What do you care about? Do you care about performance? Do you care about latency? Do you care about cost? Do you care about all of those things? Or do you care about security? Maybe you don't care about any of those things. Maybe you just care about our security guarantees. And that's probably something that we need to work on. So that's how I kind of approach a lot of the kind of conversations. And for me, a big part has also been letting go of the ego. Being okay with being the dumbest person in the room. And it's been very fruitful for me. I also like to see that, even though I may not be like a moon math cryptographer, what I bring to the table is something else. And everybody brings their own unique, value to to the table. So if I can get insights from the DeFi side or from other parts of the market, that's what I'll bring in to my engineers or to my product people, and that's the feedback that they need to build the product offerings for the market.
Yeah, that's good insight. Everybody is, bringing something to the table, basically. How about you, Ash? So how did you learn to to know what these buzzwords mean, and how hard was it?
I'd been following the ZK space on and off for years because the promises were interesting, but I played a bit with Circon, played a bit with Noir, and I never got very far. I felt like I was always investing too much and missing a core concept. Then I was at the ZK Hack Lisbon event after another event, and I was just killing some time. I like playing with NFC chips and DNA authenticated NFC products. It feels like something that you could maybe make a consumer app product out of. And in a couple hours using RISC Zero, I was able to throw together a proof that validated that I had been within proximity of this NFC chip. And I'm like, oh shit, I am the dumbest person in this room, and I was just able to make something immediately valuable. This is now ready for prime time. And yeah, companies will optimize the circuits, they'll work on making it faster and cheaper, but you can build the products now in a way that you couldn't previously.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for the free shit.
I love wearable technology, so I'm so happy to hear that you've been experimenting with it. I keep on putting my phone on all of these NFC chips as well. I think that's a big piece for me. I mean, one thing that's really helped me, and I don't know if you guys use it a lot, has been AI. In my ZK, non-ZK to ZK learning journey. Sometimes my engineer will my engineers will send me something super complicated or a GitHub repo, and I'm not understanding the README, and I'm just like, what does this actually mean, Claude? But also what's been really interesting with AI has been learning how to code and learning how to utilize the tooling. I mean, I was able to install the RISC Zero tooling and in 10-15 minutes, and I did get into issues, but I've been using AI to debug all of the problems. So as much as there is we work in a very technical field, and I think even if your role is non-technical, it's always really important to push yourself out of the comfort zone and use the tools that are available to you, use the people that are available to you, to try out the tooling that you are putting out into the world, because that's the closest way you're going to get to your target persona and your market. I'm selling to a developer and a builder a tooling that if I don't know how to use it, how will I even understand the bottlenecks that they're experiencing?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, is it fair to say, Ruks, that I guess AI and talking to your teammates are kind of the way
AI,
you're
talking
learning?
to teammates, making mistakes, basically, understanding the narratives, following what are the biggest leaders saying, how is my team even, digesting these perspectives? Yeah.
Okay, you want?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's so much tooling out there to help you understand what is relevant to the conversations you're having, and get a really good foundation without having to be day and night coding.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's why I want to plug ZK Mesh again, our newsletter, because that's, I mean, you mentioned it, following what's happening in the space, and even though you don't understand everything that's written maybe in the article, well, you actually have ways by talking to people, asking on ZK Hack Discord, or asking Claude what that means, and yeah, I agree that's definitely a way to learn more and get accustomed with these notions. I wanted to switch a bit to the topic of trying to figure out whether working in ZK is different from maybe the other spaces you were working before. So yeah, maybe we can start with you, Ruks. You've had I guess a wide type of roles before, in the startup roles, then Web3, and then now ZK. So how would you say ZK is different?
I would say it's different in its specific application, but I think the curiosity you have in the different Web 2 and Web 3 spaces are kind of transferable. I think that if you are someone who's interested in working in a startup, or someone who's worked in any other blockchain or Web 3 project, that you probably have a level of curiosity and desire to see something that's kind of never been done before. So for me, I would say if you're able to bring that forward, it's really useful. Working kind of in more of a maybe DeFi side of things, I would say a lot of what you're doing is B2B, and even if you're working with consumers, like at the end of the day, like you're really focused on a very like maybe a formal offering because it's very focused on that side of things. Whereas like working at Aleo, working with builders, working in community, it's a very different type of conversation you're having, and you're interacting with folks from like, I've never coded but I want to, or I'm incredibly capable and I can code in all these different languages. Why should I even give a shit about Aleo? So I think it's being open to a conversation and really listening to people and seeing if you can direct them in a place that makes sense for where they're at and where they want to go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, very similar to us. I mean, we cater to like big teams and protocols and rollups, and obviously those have very formal offerings and all of that. But the heart of RISC Zero is our builders and our developers, and that was very much validated last night when we did our provable event. And we took a theme that was very different from the ones that we did before, where it was less about us and more about what our community was building, the applications that they were building on top of. And immediately it resonated with everyone because they were able to see, somebody who is very active in the ZK space, they were able to see what Aragon was building, and it immediately clicked for them. Or if somebody in the DeFi space, who's building Exchange or a DEX, they're able to see what Hashflow is building. So yeah, for us, a big part of working, I guess like your original question was more like how is working in ZK different from working in Web3? I think it's similar in, from other parts of Web3 in where you do have to be builder first and community focused, and you always have to make sure that, they are feeling validated and they are feeling like they are being seen through your initiatives. But I also think in ZK, what's been a little bit different has been maybe, just how technical things are. And I may have a different kind of point of view from you, because I know you mentioned that, when somebody is very good at understanding a concept, they can explain it ELI5. I've kind of experienced something different. I've experienced that, when folks, and this is including me, when folks they understand something very deeply and very technically, sometimes it's harder to explain it ELI5, because you're just so used to using the technical jargon and the buzzwords, and it becomes your lingo. And then when you're talking to someone who's non-ZK, and you're kind of trying to shill them, this is why you should think about it, it really goes over their head. So, yeah, I think adapting your language to, again, the bottlenecks that folks in other verticals are facing, that in itself has its own learning curve. And I think we as an industry just need to be a little bit more sensitive, to that, to get our value prop across. Yeah.
And to come back to maybe the previous question, did you feel like there are differences when you work with ZK companies or people that are more from the traditional crypto world? Do you feel any type of difference, or
absolutely?
Is it still
Every person that I've spoken to in Web3 just gives me the same idea in a different color. Every team that I've spoken to that's building something in ZK, it's like, whoa, how did I never think of that? And that it just seems so obvious all of a sudden, and how have we not had it already? So it's actually exciting for the first time.
Okay, nice. Okay, great. So maybe for the people who are in the Web3 industry at the moment and they would like to explore and maybe be working in ZK, well, what would be an advice that you could give them? Maybe just hear about what people are building and get blown?
Build something. Seriously, build something. That one advice has always helped me in my entire career for the past decade. I've always made shifts, whether it's in, from my work on the ICO stuff to Cello to ZK. I always had to build a project, get my hands dirty, fail, and you learn so much from that, and you just 10x your knowledge, and it just shows in the conversations that you end up having in your desired niche, because you've put yourself in the shoes of the builder, of the target person of the company you're interviewing at. So I always say, try your hands at building something.
I think you picked the best piece of advice one could choose, but did you have maybe any other advice you would like to give?
Yeah, I would say literally just start. 90% of, especially in the blockchain space, is showing up and talking to people. And so if that's just attending a meetup or a panel or joining a Discord group or using your AI to learn more, just start. Like 99% of the world is not doing this, and if you're interested, show up. You'll be surprised by the same faces you'll meet. You'll be surprised by the openness of the conversation. And when you're, when you're interested and you know what it is that you want to start working on, start building, start networking, start talking. But I promise you, like, so many team members we have, so many ambassadors we have at Aleo are people that never had heard of a single like crypto thing, had never coded, and now there are DevRel ambassadors, now there are ecosystem ambassadors, now there are community builders. So I think it's just put yourself out there. That's your biggest hurdle.
I would say also, yeah, I agree with that. Some like non-technical ideas just to get started is start creating content. There's a big gap still in ZK education. If you're able to like understand something, spend the time and distill it down for a non-ZK person who's also probably looking for a resource like that, just start developing content, start asking questions, open questions. There's a lot of gaps still. This technology is still super nascent. And if you're thinking that there's like an issue with something, somebody else is probably thinking that too. And yeah, there's also lots of non-technical ways to even get contributions into GitHubs. Like a lot of repos are open source. Honestly, like there are people that go in and just like do grammar edits, and that's considered a contribution, and that's how you get your handle like recognized. That's how people get to know you, and you start building like a reputation as well, like in this space.
Yeah, we know a bit about that gap at ZK Hack. We're also working towards closing it. Maybe as a last question and to wrap up this this panel, I wanted to ask you. I mean, so what is I think you're currently working on that gets you excited, ideally ZK related? And yeah, that's the time where you can maybe share a bit your project.
We are working on using zero-knowledge proofs to, enable social authentication for blockchains, to, enable, emails as assets, or like using them for, make a chain letter into something fun, right? Like, there's so many things that we can't even conceive of them. And it's exciting now because I feel like we're at this sweet spot where next year this is all going to be logos and like media professionals, like ZKOLs will probably be a thing that exists. Like now is when it feels like it's still a community where people are working on things that are interesting. It's going to become, just another buzzword that gets blown up with investors and like people trying to take advantage of it. So.
Yeah, so a little bit of shilling on the RISC Zero part. We're launching our testnet of our decentralized proving network, and as I mentioned, we're kind of focused on building this era of provable applications. So we're expanding. We're trying to bring ZK to all of the different like verticals, whether that's DeFi, governance, even verticals that I don't have access to. So if you're thinking or you're already building in a vertical that you want to like see what it looks like to generate a RISC Zero proof, we're running a program called the AppNet. This is the first phase of our public testnet, and this is a great time to really just learn how to use Boundless, understand how our DevX works, give us a lot of feedback on how to make it better. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see kind of the diversity of use cases that we're going to enable, and how that also translates from not just the application layer, but all the way through to the hardware layer and the innovations that we'll see there. And in terms of things that excite me, I mean, I don't know if people have been following what the Cursive team was doing, but at ZK Summit they did this whole social connectivity,
social experiments
with the wearable tech, and I think that is so fascinating. I absolutely love that. If there are any folks that are also doing like privacy for like healthcare data, I would love to chat with you. That's just a personal rabbit hole of mine. So yeah,
I totally know the exact person to introduce you to, and I will. Nafe is great.
That's why we do meetups, by the way, for people to mingle,
I would say, so obviously like when mainnet, Aleo is finally on mainnet.
Congrats.
So we're very excited. It's been a long time coming. Thank you all of you who supported us. So for us, again, to shill what we're doing, so grants are available. If you have an idea, We have a whole different type of grants that are available, from like inception to prototype to milestone grants to like full-on partnerships. We're really interested in building out a funnel where if you do want to build a business using zero knowledge proof, using our dev tools like ZPass, that like we're able to facilitate and support you on that. So if you have an idea, if you have a product, you think privacy is going to make it better, whether it's medtech, whether it's gaming, whether it's whatever, apply for that grant. We're really looking for projects that we want to invest in, and we really want to help shape the future of zero knowledge.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys, for all the advices, all the words, and talking about working in ZK. So yeah, if you have any questions for our panelists, well, please find them. And now we're going to take a short break before the next panel, where we will welcome our panelists from technical roles and talk again about working in ZK, but from a slightly different angle, on a more with a more technical focus. So thank you very much, guys, and yeah, see you in a bit.
Thank you.